So this just seems like an upstanding time. This seems like a time in the world where people are finding a particular voice, a particular way of standing up and standing out, of coming alongside people who might need accompaniment. We're finding ways to change the balance of power. We're finding ways to find the power of solidarity. Sometimes these situations can be quite immediate, kind of like the stories we were telling in the children's sermon. Sometimes they're more general, they're more kind of structural or systemic, or have a larger frame to them. But in any case, I think this has something to do with our ability to pay attention, to be aware of when we might need to make a move. Now, the scripture story this morning, there are these three incidences that are kind of put together in one chunk. Three situations where the primary thing that was happening was that Jesus was doing things on the Sabbath that he wasn't supposed to do. So he and his disciples were coming through some fields, and as they went, they were picking the sheaves of grain in the field. And you're not supposed to harvest on the Sabbath. And a little bit later, Jesus is in the temple, and he took the bread of presence. And the bread of presence would have been kind of the ritual bread that sat on the altar in the temple. It was really for ritual use. Probably only the priests were supposed to eat it. And yet, his people were hungry. And so he took the bread of presence, and he ate it, and he shared it with his friends. And again, he was in the temple, and there was a person with a withered hand. And Jesus had to make this choice: am I going to heal this person? Am I going to meet the immediate needs of this person? Or am I going to follow the religious law not to heal on the Sabbath? And he chose to heal the man's hand. In all of these cases, Jesus was putting one thing ahead of another. He was putting the needs of the people around him ahead of the rules and the laws. Now, we could have a debate about law, but we're not. That's really not the point this morning. The point is, what are the situations where we need to look at what's happening and maybe do something different than we're used to doing? Because in order to be an upstander, unless it's just kind of built into your DNA, it takes a certain amount of initiative. It takes a step. It takes the willingness to get involved. And sometimes in situations that we might find uncomfortable, or we're not really sure how we're supposed to behave, or we're just not sure because we are polite people. Right? Yes. Okay. We were taught to be polite. And in the church, we're taught to be welcoming, right? We're taught to welcome people. And would we interrupt something that was happening in the church? It's like, in order to take that kind of action, we probably have to step over a certain amount of inertia. It's just kind of built into perhaps who we are, or how we think our culture works, or even what we've been called to do by our faith community. So recently there was a situation where one of our transgender members was out in front of the church before the service, and someone came up, not a person of our community, but someone else, and they were looking for food. And they came into conversation with our friend in the church and started to question or challenge the person's gender expression. And you know, that is a challenging thing to have to take in. It's a challenging thing to be questioned about something that feels so deeply true. And sometimes it's hard for us even to kind of stand up for ourselves, especially if there have been patterns of that kind of behavior, especially if you're in a place that you think is supposed to be safe for you. And I believe that we are called as people of faith to know what to do in a situation like that, to be upstanders, to add our support, to add our accompaniment, to share and kind of shift the power in those situations. And the things that we might do are actually the very same ones that we talk to the children about. You might just actually come up with the person. If you see that something's happening that you're not quite sure about, just come up and join in the circle so that you can see directly what's happening, and also to know that you're with the person that seems to be being threatened. It's as simple as that. Another is kind of a diversion technique. It's the interrupting technique, where you might say, oh, excuse me, but can you come into the hall of entrance? I need to ask you a question about something. Or some other way just to help the person exit from the situation. The third is actually to speak out and to speak up, to say, I'm sorry, but in this community, this is not right. This is not the way that we treat each other. And to actually set a boundary. Now, this one is when we start to get into the challenging territory. Anytime we're asked to speak up, we're actually moving into some territory that may be hard for us. And yet I think we need to be ready to do that. We know that these situations occur, and we know that we can step up and step in and say something. And then the last piece is to tell someone. Now, with children, the power of that, or the purpose of that, is to help take the situation into a place, to someone who might have some authority, who might be able to do something. I would say with adults, this is also true, but another important piece in this is that when we tell people who might be in charge what's happened, then that person has heard that story and knows that that thing has happened. So they can kind of look around and see if is this something that's happening often? Am I hearing about this a lot? Am I hearing about a particular person who seems to be doing a particular behavior over and over again? Because I think for adults, this is an important distinction to make. Is this a one-off thing, or if this is a pattern? Not that we shouldn't interrupt a one-off thing, but if we start to recognize that there's a pattern of behavior that's a challenge, we can speak to that. If we don't know the story, then we can't really know. And so to have that central person who might be in a position of authority, to have those stories, to know what's going on, can be helpful to see what might need to happen in the bigger picture. This is what upstanding might look like. Actually taking an action in a specific situation. And I can imagine that you can imagine situations where that might be the case, where that has happened. I don't know how often or how rarely that happens to you. But to know that we might need to step over our own reticence, our own politeness, is an important step for us to make. That's one kind of upstanding. But there are some other ways that upstanding what that might look like. It might look like the situation where the two African-American men were challenged about why they were in the Starbucks, and they didn't seem to be buying anything. And one of the things that happened was that, first of all, a young African-American woman stepped into the situation and started to question it. And then a white woman came in and also inserted herself in the conversation as well. And one of them was videotaping it. I don't know whether it was the first or the second. But the fact that someone stepped in and stepped up into that conversation, and then this kind of added element of a person who, because of the shape of our culture, presumably has a particular power as a white person to step into that, also has power. But regardless of race, to have someone else step in and step up is the way that we can be upstanding. I think the whole Me Too movement, where we're questioning sexism and abuse, both verbal and physical, is an example of people coming together, of standing side by side and saying, this is my truth. It is at one level, it's an individual action to claim that truth. But to know that there's a situation where there's a higher likelihood that those words will be heard and understood and supported can make all the difference in the world. And I think we've noticed that there's this shift, there's this change going on where we're standing up in a way that perhaps we haven't in the past. We're listening to those stories. We're believing them. We're centering them. We're saying this story is the most important thing. It's to listen to the story and say, yes, we believe. We believe you. This is another kind of upstanding. On Friday night, Franklin Graham was in town, who is the son of Billy Graham, the evangelist, and he's on a little tour of California. And he is actually quite conservative and has been kind of spreading a conservative message that seems to be walking some line between the religious and the political. And Molly actually started this. She said, I feel a need to be down there to say, you know, there are Christians who don't believe some of the things that you're saying. And she put out the word, and a group of First Church people went down with their signs and attended that rally to present another kind of presence, to stand up, to be with, to question the truth or reality, or to even kind of shift a balance of power. So there are many ways that we can stand up. Another one is happening right now in our congregation. We have chosen to be a sanctuary church, which means that we're going to support people who are dealing with immigration issues. And this is a time when various forces are coming together to provide that kind of support. And we have an accompaniment team, a group of people who have committed to standing with a family that's dealing with immigration issues. And this morning we have a special guest. I'm going to actually invite Molly to come up and introduce her and to have her tell her story.
Dianet Lopez. So yes, this spring our sanctuary accompaniment team did training to become equipped. Come right up here with me. Vengo conmigo. To companion an immigrant family in distress. We were paired with our family last month, and we have been blessed to be getting to know Dianet Lopez and her children Alexa and Dennis. Their husband and father, Raul Lopez, is incarcerated at West County Detention Center in Richmond. Dianet can only visit him about once a month. Dennis, her son, is a sophomore in high school. He works 2 full days a week to help support his family, since Raul was the chief breadwinner, but for the last 15 months, he's been held without hope of release or means of providing for his family. Alexa, who turns 15 this summer, will celebrate her quinceañera, and she'll also begin, yes, let's celebrate that. Yes. Of course, the quinceañera is an important rite of passage into adulthood, and Alexa will be becoming an adult too soon as she begins to work to support her family. Now I'm going to step aside and let Dianet tell her story with a little bit of translation from me.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Dianet. Soy esposa de Raúl.
My name is Dianet. I'm the wife of Raul.
Él es un marido cariñoso, atento y trabajador.
He's a very caring spouse and a hard worker.
Que bien mantenía a nuestra familia.
Who took good care of our family, takes good care of our family.
Él es un padre responsable y muy atento a sus hijos y conmigo.
He's a very responsible father, very attentive to his kids and to me.
Es muy detallista.
He takes care of everything.
Nos proveó una vida donde yo tuviera que dedicarme.
He provides a life for us in which I can dedicate myself.
A ser ama de casa para hacerme responsable a mis hijos.
To take care of the home and be responsible for my children.
Lo más importante para Raúl
The most important thing for Raul
es que nuestros hijos tengan una vida feliz.
is that his kids have a happy life.
Mi familia sufre porque en este desarrollo mis hijos no tienen padre.
My family's suffering because they don't have a father right now
Para apoyarlos,
to support them.
Raúl está tan gran padre.
Raul's a big part.
Es tan gran parte de nuestra vida
A big part of our life.
y lo extrañamos mucho.
I miss him very much.
Desafortunadamente, la vida de los inmigrantes indocumentados
Unfortunately, the life of undocumented immigrants,
es una dura vida con muchas barreras
it's a hard life with a lot of barriers
y sufrimiento.
and suffering.
Raúl reconoce que la manera en que sobrellevaba la botella
Raul recognized that the way he was struggling with the bottle
no era saludable,
was not healthy.
pero estando encerrado
But since being incarcerated,
ha reconocido que
has
él cometió errores.
he's recognized that he's made mistakes.
Todos sabemos que nadie es perfecto.
We all know that nobody's perfect.
Raúl recibió un DUI después de un momento cuando su madre falleció.
Raul received a DUI after his mother passed away.
Raúl pagó su deuda a la sociedad
He paid his debt to society.
y actualmente terminó sus clases de Alcohólicos Anónimos.
And he finished his Alcoholics Anonymous class.
Por esta razón, él demuestra que él tiene la posibilidad de mejorar su vida.
For these reasons, he's demonstrated the possibility of bettering his life.
Después de 15 meses en la detención, él merece chance de salir.
After 15 months in detention, he deserves a chance to leave, to get out.
Y más que nuestra familia sea reunida porque no somos completa sin Raúl.
And even more, that our family deserves to be reunited because we are not complete without Raul.
Alexa, Dennis y yo nos hemos reunido
Alexa, Dennis, and I have pulled together, have reunited
con familias y amigos y organizaciones que nos apoyan.
We've met with family, friends, and organizations that support us
En la lucha para la libertad de Raúl.
in the struggle to liberate Raul.
Frecuentemente asistimos a conversaciones y vigilias para poder presentar nuestra historia.
We frequently attend conversations and vigils to lend our story
De nuestra familia.
of our family.
Hoy andamos preparándonos para una de estas vigilias.
And today we're getting ready to prepare for one of these vigils.
Y les quisiera invitar para el próximo sábado
We'd like to invite you to next Saturday's vigil.
que tenemos preparada una vigilia en West County Detention
We're preparing a vigil at West County Detention
a las 11 de la mañana.
at 11 o'clock in the
Si
morning.
nos quisieran acompañar, están cordialmente invitados. Muchísimas gracias.
If you'd like to stand up and stand with us, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Un abrazo. Un abrazo. Qué fuerte. Gracias. ¿Tú quieres decir algo?
My name's Alexa, and I'm Raul's daughter. I am 14 years old and unfortunately have been without my father for almost a year and a half. It has been very hard on me because as a teenager, I've had to grow up without my dad, who I adore and miss so much. This has been incredibly difficult because my quinceañera is approaching. This is the time that I'm supposed to be in celebration because I am being welcomed into adulthood. adulthood. And my parents get to recognize the hard work they've put into raising me has finally paid off. At first, I didn't want to celebrate because being happy doesn't feel right, knowing that my dad is in pain and forcefully being kept away from us, his family. But then I realized that being kept apart is more of a reason why we should celebrate. It gives us a chance to connect with our community, so many people have seen our struggle and want to help us support my dad. I will use my quinceañera on June 9th as a protest at the West County Detention Center to highlight the inhumanity involved in separating immigrant families. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful.
To be upstanders really is written into the DNA of us as people of faith. And I think it's an important time for us to recognize that that is a particular time for upstanding, that this is a time when we can come together to stand side by side, to be in solidarity, to share power, to interrupt the balance of power in the ways that we can. And of course, we do that best when we do it together, side by side, together. Amen.